The Ticats travel to Winnipeg on Saturday to take on the Blue Bombers in the final game of the regular season. I'm here with the Spec Steve Milton. Steve, this game does not mean anything in the standings. What does it mean to players?
Well, obviously, we've said this before, Drew, about every game this weekend. Every player in this league that's absolutely not a necessity to their current team is auditioning for two teams right now. One for next year, their own team, and the other being the expansion Ottawa Red Blacks. It's also a chance for, I think the Ticats have to make sure that Henry Burris and his receivers get into some kind of groove. We've both complained about that a lot in the last month. The Ticats play it down a little bit, but I still think to beat Montreal, they've got to have a better Henry Burris, at least that better Henry Burris in combination with his receivers than they had in the last two games against them. And then the other thing is reaching 10 wins, which doesn't mean anything to these individual players, but to those of us outside the team and perhaps to the upper management of the team. This will be the first time since 2001 and just the, I think, fifth time that they've reached as many as 10 wins since the league went to 18-game schedule in 1986. So those are all a lot of reasons. But essentially, look what we've come through here. We've come through the most players ever, or certainly most players this year, and probably the most players ever to dress in a single season for the Ticats. You've come through a whole bunch of question marks, injuries that you wondered about, and 3 blowout losses to reach the 18th game of the season when they don't actually have to win. It's amazing. I didn't actually think they'd get to this point. I really thought they would have, looking at this year, they would have been in a situation where they had to win this game.
The Ticats are going to sit a number of veteran players and a number of starters for this game. How do you balance off sitting guys that you know you're going to need against Montreal next Sunday and wanting to maintain the momentum that you have going into the playoffs?
I think it's partly up here, and I think it's partly touchy-feely. And I think a lot of that maybe you and I couldn't get because we're not down there in the room, we're not on the sideline, we're not actually out on the field, and so there's a bit of a imprecise science as to who plays and who doesn't. Obviously, and we both predicted this, that Henry has to play until he, and more importantly, Kent Austin feels that he's comfortable with this offense. You've got to worry about some guys that are iffy on that. That's the hardest decision, I think, of guys that are coming off an injury and you're not quite sure. Ellingson might be a guy like that, where do you hang on to him? Like, he needs to play to get into a rhythm for the playoffs if he's going to play in the playoffs. But do you risk maybe putting him back? I think there's 3 or 4 players in that situation. And the other thing is you got to make sure that enough guys that are going to play against Montreal, and they're going to play big roles against Montreal, have the momentum heading in, but at the same time you don't injure them. This is the kind of thing that goes on with these lame duck weekends every year in this league.
Make sure you check out Saturday's Spectator for Steve's column and for my story. And for all the news from Winnipeg, make sure you check out the Scratching Post blog. Reporting for the Hamilton Spectator, I'm Drew Edwards.